Hello and welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for March 2nd. I am your host, David Michalek, and every week at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we all come together live right here on Facebook and YouTube to talk about credit. As a consumer credit expert with nearly a decade of experience, I have conducted over 10,000 one-on-one credit coaching sessions, mostly to help people to repair their credit and improve their credit, and I'm looking forward to helping you do the same thing as well. So during our time today, I'll be answering your questions about credit reports, scores, the dispute process, and of course, Credit Versio. So please take a second, introduce yourself. I already see some familiar faces. That's great. And I'm glad you're here. So every week I start off by talking about the most popular subject or most popular question of the week. I see we got Bill Jackson here. Mike, our regular, good to see you. Deji, good to see you as well. Dale, welcome. Okay, we're going to have a really good live today. You know what, before I get into the subject matter of the day, and of course, open it up to questions, post your questions, happy to answer them. You know how this works if you've been here before. It doesn't even have to be on topic. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. But a little bit of housekeeping that I want to cover real quickly, something I'm very excited about. March 5th, which is going to be this Saturday, marks the 2-year launch date of Credit Versio. So March 5th of 2020, Credit Versio was released to the public. Now, we were around for a lot longer than that. It took us several years to build the software itself before it was ready to be introduced to the public. But it's really, really exciting what's happening with Credit Versio, with DIY in general. And about 200 to 300 people create a Credit Versio account every day. Right now, at my last look, we had about 147, almost 148,000 people that have created a Credit Versio account to fix their own credit, to take charge of their own credit. And one other little tidbit that I personally find incredibly exciting is, you know, when we launched, we thought that a lot of credit repair companies would be very intimidating because just by virtue of our size now, nobody was really sure exactly what to expect when Credit Versio launched 2 years ago. But we have exploded into the size that's actually there's probably only a couple of credit repair companies out there that are bigger than Credit Versio now, just by virtue of how many people enroll on a monthly basis. And what happened was we were really embraced by the credit repair community because what they clearly understood, especially most of the companies, very savvy, very good at customer service, really wanting the best for their clients. Once they looked at what Credit Versio was and they realized that, wow, software is actually better at diagnosing problems on credit reports because I mean, we live in a software-generated world. This isn't, or a world that I think is run largely by software. I mean, everything from our smartphones to the computers that we're working on right now. Software, it just does certain things far better than what people can do. And being able to import or raw, just ones and zeros, just data of credit reports and having an AI read it and diagnose what's wrong with it, that's a huge leap that has taken place in tons of other industries, but it just really hasn't in the credit repair space until Credit Versio was launched. So the exciting news is Credit Versio is now being white labeled by some of the largest credit repair companies in the United States. The first one will launch probably the end of this week. It's taken us a couple of months to build it for them. So anyway, we're very, very excited that in 2022, there will be about 1,500 or more credit repair companies that will have the ability to white label Credit Versio and offer this as an option to their clients. People like you wanted to do this yourself. You didn't want to pay hundreds or even thousands of dollars to a credit repair company. You wanted to take control of your own credit, and that's what Credit Versio allows you to do for minimal cost. $20 a month if you're going with the low-end smart credit, which is really all that you need. So I'm excited to share that with you. Again, welcome to today's Q&A live. Mike, I see that you posted something, but for whatever reason, I can't bring it on the screen, so let me just read it. Okay, so, man, I don't know why it's not coming over. let me do this. No, that's not going to work. Okay. So it said, I'll just read it off. It says, hey, David, if I'm challenging an item on Experian and one of the suggestions to challenge the item says another bureau is not reporting the item, could that cause the creditor to actually report it to that bureau? No. Okay. So let me just think about this for a second. So if I'm challenging an item on Experian and one of the suggestions to challenge the item, it says another bureau is not. Okay. Not probably not. So here's what happens when you have information that is inconsistent across bureaus, and inconsistent oftentimes could mean that it's on one bureau and not another. If a data furnisher does not report to all three bureaus, then nothing you can do is going to, say if it doesn't report to Equifax, the data furnisher is not going to report that information to Equifax just because you challenge it. Also, too, what I'm curious is the suggested reason saying that that the item was deleted from one of the bureaus and not and still on another bureau. That's really what I want to know. And let me do something real quick here. I'm not sure why this is making me so bright. Let me dial this down a little bit. Okay. So Mike, if that's really your question, because there is a suggested reason that says, hey, this was deleted from my Experian account, but it's still on Equifax and TransUnion. So let me know if that's really the question that you're asking. All right, so while you're doing that, and Mike, I'm not sure exactly why it wouldn't come up on the screen here, but I can't see it. Okay, so let's start with the subject that I wanted to go over today. Okay, hold on a second. So Mike says, this one came up. It says the item is not reporting to TransUnion. I think I'd have to see that in context. I'm not exactly sure. Mike, if you want to take a screenshot of the account, or if you want to just email me directly at davidm@creditversio.com, I'll take a look at them. I'm not exactly sure what we're referencing here. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, so I'm going to talk about how to create a proper dispute letter. So this was a really hot topic this week. People having challenges just with some of the basic stuff on how to create a dispute letter. A lot of it comes down to just not really following the instructions that are laid out in the tutorial videos. So one thing that I've said many times is that about 90% of the questions that we get, both in tickets that come in via email or calls that come into our support team, really are answered in the tutorial videos. So we know that people are getting started with the process, which is really great, but not starting off watching those 4 quick start videos that are in the tutorial section, which are really critical, because one of the first things that the tutorial videos teaches you to do is to upload your ID. So I'm going to break this down for you, just some basic points on how to create a proper dispute letter. So the first thing is, I'll show you this in the account here. Let's see. Okay, let me show. Okay, great. So what you're going to see here, if you're on your home page, whether it's mobile or it is a desktop, you're going to see at the very bottom where it says photo IDs. I've got it circled in red here. And then you'll see photo ID and then proof of address. You'll see a button that says add it. So that before you create your first dispute letter, you want to add your IDs first. So your photo ID, driver's license is really the best. Most people have a driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, you can use a state ID card. If you don't have that, you can use a passport. Perfectly fine. It does not matter if your address is correct on your driver's license, because that's what the second form of ID is for. That is your proof of address. Now, the proof of address has to be recent, 45 days, maybe 60 days, no more than that. Ideally, you want to upload a utility bill. The utility bill is the best. Gas, electric, water, dish, cable, something like that. The reason why credit bureaus love utility bills is because they know that utility provider did an ID check. They ran your credit. So they're certain that it's you, and they're certain that that's where you live. So the bureaus are willing to accept that. 2 other forms, or actually 3 other forms you could use. One is a pay stub. So you can block out your income. Nobody needs to see that. But a pay stub is generally reliable. It's probably going to have your most recent address on it. Same thing with a bank statement. So just the upper cover page is perfectly fine. You don't need to show any balances or account numbers. It just has to say the bank's name and address, their physical address, and your name and physical address. And by the way, these online banks don't count. So if you've got Chime, I've seen this happen where people using Versio uploaded a statement of their Chime account. Well, Chime doesn't have a physical banking address. At least it's not on the statements. So when they sent that to the bureaus sent it back and said, hey, this is not a qualifying piece. We can't take this form of ID or of proof of address. So what you want to do is bank statement, upper top, or the upper third of that page that shows their name and address, your name and address, that's fine. Also an insurance statement. So if your auto insurance, home insurance, that's fine as well. Again, all of these apply to that recent date. It's got to be within about 45 days, no more than 60 days. All right. So make sure you upload your ID. The reason why you want to upload your ID first, and this is why we walk you through this in the tutorial videos, because when you create your first dispute letter, Versio will automatically attach both forms of ID, your ID and your proof of address, to that dispute letter as one PDF document and mail it to you. Yeah, of course, yeah. If you wanted to, you can print your dispute letter and then you can print a separate copy of your ID and your proof of address if you want to. Versio just likes to make it easy for you, so it's one print and makes it nice and sharp. Okay. The reason why you want to include your ID, and this is a line that I have probably told hundreds, maybe even 1,000 times, this exact wording. When people say, well, do you have to include your ID? Okay, you have the right under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to dispute anything on your credit report that you would like. The bureaus have the right to refuse your dispute if they don't know who you are, if they can't verify your ID. Now, this plays a particularly large role if you've moved recently. For example, let's say you're in your new house, you've only been there for maybe 6 months, you have not applied for any credit, none of your creditors, because you haven't applied for any credit, none of these applications have updated the credit bureaus. So if you've ever wondered why you have like wrong names on your credit report, not old addresses, but misspelled names, wrong names. In fact, I had a ticket earlier today where somebody said, hey, how come all these weird names are on the dispute letter? They're not my names. Well, those are names that the credit bureaus have of you because somebody at some point was doing data entry on an application, misspelled something or added something wrong, and the bureaus picked it up and held on to it. So if you've moved recently and they don't have a current address, when you send your dispute letter and they match everything up and they're like, oh, shoot, wow, David here, we know David, but we know him at this address. Now he's got this new address and we don't have any ID. So you might have them respond back saying, we'd love to take care of your dispute for you, but we need, and they'll give you a list of the ID that they need, which is essentially the same thing that I've just told you. So don't lose a month. Don't lose 30 days by having to swing back around and give them what they want in the first place. Make sure you upload your ID. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here. Derek Hayes, good afternoon. Can late car payments be removed? I tried to ask Santander to remove them because I wasn't late for like a year. They said they can't do that. So Derek, great question. This is really the fundamental question that everybody is asking when it comes to the credit repair process. Can this be removed? Can a late payment be removed? Can a bankruptcy be removed? Can a charge-off be removed? The answer is universal for anything that can be reported to a credit bureau. Anything can be removed if, and only if, this is right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, if it's erroneous, outdated, incomplete, or, this is the key one, unverifiable. So it's possible that the information, the late payment from Santander, isn't reporting accurately. And if it isn't, if you dispute it, the burden of proof, the burden of performance, the burden of validation, all of that is not on you. It's on the data furnisher in this case being Santander. So Santander, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, has to perform certain duties, and they have to do them in a very specific period of time, 30 days or less. Now what happens is, Really, one of three things is going to happen. Number one, the information is correct. They can prove it's correct, and there it will stay for the full 7 years. Second, the information isn't correct, and they are able to fix it. Actually, that's really part of one. The second is the information is incorrect. They don't know how to fix it, or they can't fix it. They don't have the information, in which case they delete it. Okay. Third is they cannot. They're not going to be able to verify the information. Meaning, let's just say it's a late payment from 3 or 4 years ago. They don't have the will, they don't have the time, energy, they don't have the ability to verify it. And by the way, when you're disputing accounts and you're just going for like the suggested reason, a lot of times what causes that deletion is not necessarily that it's reporting inaccurately and that the data furnisher is not able to correct it. What happens most of the time is there are certain things that are in place, certain parameters in place, whereby the data furnisher just deletes the information when it's disputed without really even doing much of an investigation. So Derek, to answer your question, maybe. Okay, it depends. So maybe and it depends are answers that you're going to hear a lot when asking questions about the repair and dispute process. Okay, can it be deleted? Sure. Is it going to be deleted? I don't know. Nobody knows. Only your data furnisher knows. What I can tell you is that creating a strong dispute and following up with a round 2 and a round 3 and even a round 4 where each dispute builds on top of the other, that's the way that you really shake it out, that you really massage that dispute for everything that it's worth and see if the data furnisher can stand up to the rigorous requirements that the law puts forth. And a lot of times that's how you see things get deleted. They just get sick of it, or they get sick of the disputes. They can't respond to the disputes. This is why Versio really does the same thing that a high-end white glove credit repair company does. It doesn't stop at one dispute. It builds, it brings in that second credit report and says, okay, what happens? What happened to this dispute? Okay, nothing happened, or this changed. Okay, let's analyze it. Now it's time for round 2, then round 3, and then round 4 if needed. If an account is still there after 4 rounds of disputes, maybe 5 rounds of disputes, and Credit Versio doesn't find an error, and you'll know if it finds an error because it'll say the word error next to the suggested reason. But if it's still there after 4 or 5 rounds of disputes, then you know that the data furnisher was able to satisfy the burden of proof that is put upon them to the credit bureaus, and there it will stay. Okay, let's see. Hope that answers your question thoroughly, Derek. Chad, do you recommend freezing secondary credit reporting agencies like LexisNexis? Boy, I mean, I wish I had $10 for every time I got this question. Chad, it's a great question, by the way. There's really about maybe 25 to 35 questions that are asked in the credit repair industry arena, whatever you want to call it. And this is one of them, freezing accounts. So this is such an important question, and it's so misunderstood. And there's so much bad information out there that I've even brought on live with me. If you're new to this, Chad, I've brought on this show with me John Alzheimer, who's regarded as the #1 credit expert in the country, formerly with FICO, formerly with Equifax. Also, Steve Rieger, who was at TransUnion for 25 years. He used to run the entire dispute division for TransUnion in California. So these are two heavies. These are guys that will tell you exactly what goes on in the dispute process. And both of them had said this, Chad. Freezing your accounts does nothing. All that freezing, LexisNexis, Sage, Stream, you can freeze all 3 bureaus if you want to. All that does is it prevents creditors from accessing your credit report. Okay, freezing LexisNexis does not prevent the bureaus from accessing LexisNexis. So when people ask me that question, they're usually trying to dispute a bankruptcy, and you'll hear these talking heads on YouTube who, as John and I like to jokingly say, stand in front of cars and homes they don't own that are giving you very, very bad advice. And they don't come from the credit repair industry. In fact, nobody who's regarded as an expert in this industry has any idea who these people are. And they'll tell you, freeze your LexisNexis, freeze your Sage Stream. It doesn't do anything. The bureaus have full access to that. So don't waste your time freezing your accounts. with LexisNexis or SageStream. Don't freeze your bureaus. There's no advantage whatsoever to doing that if you're in the dispute process. Now, having said that, if you're freezing them just for identity protection, yeah, by all means, it's not a bad idea, especially if there's something's happened where somebody's got access to your account, then definitely you want to freeze your accounts. Okay. Nilsson, I have negative reports since 2014. Do they get removed automatically after 7 years? Extra 180. How can they just? Okay, so most of the time when I get this question, Nilsson, people are misreading the date. Hard coded into every account on your credit report is something called a DOFD. Now, we can't see it most of the time, because most consumer reports, we get what's called a consumer credit disclosure. We call them credit reports, but that's not really what they are. You and I, all of us together, we all get abbreviated like snapshots of what's on our credit report, just so we can understand it. If we were to see like a real credit report, it would be massive. We wouldn't know what to do with the amount of data that's on there. So there are things on there, a lot of them inconsequential to our daily life that we don't see. In there is what's called the DOFD. It's the date of first delinquency. Typically it's that 30-day late that you had that went to a 60 and then a 90, then a 120, and then usually it's charged off depending on what kind of a loan we're talking about. Well, that 7-year mark starts here. Unless, and this happens a lot, you go 30 and you go 60 and then you get caught up for a period of time. Okay, and then the DOFD was here, but now that you're caught up, it's over here. So credit reports, the bureaus are very in tune to where that DOFD is. So if it's on your credit report, chances are that 7 years has not come up yet. The account might be from 2014, but that's probably not when the DOFD is. It's probably much, much later than that. And it's a little bit challenging to find out when that date is. One of the ways you can do it is you can order a paper credit report from the bureaus, and usually on the right side, it'll say this will report until, and it'll tell you the date. Bureaus typically drop things off at the 6-year, 9-month mark, so a little bit before 7 years, just because they don't want to get any trouble. They like that 3-month buffer just to make sure that they've given themselves a little space in case they get some problems. Okay, Mike. Okay, here we go. Well, this one came across. So, David, I was challenging an account that was shown on Experian and TransUnion, and Experian was showing 4 late payments, and TransUnion showed none. Ah, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So, a suggestion said account is being reported incorrectly because TransUnion showed 0. Thanks. Yeah. So, what happens with that, Mike, is if you've got late payments on TransUnion, see, late payments on TransUnion showed none. Let me just read this one more time. Experian and TransUnion payments, TransUnion showed none. Okay, so you're typically not going to dispute the account that's showing none, because you're right. What happens? They say, oh yeah, there's 4 late payments that should be here. Also, here's why I really like the question. You have to put, this is a DIY process. So you have to put a little thought into this, which you obviously have. Like, for example, one of the things that John and I talk about quite frequently is if you've got a charge off that's 5 years old and it's your oldest account, okay, it's the oldest account on your credit report, and you're getting all of that credit for that age. Do you dispute something that old, considering that a 5-year-old charge off is probably negligible on your credit after 36 months? The answer is going to be no. You probably don't want to dispute that. So you have to think about these things. Now, there are very, very few subjects like this where you have to really put any thought into it. That's one of them. And what you've done there is another one. So if you look at that, if you know that you really are late, you were late 4 times, yeah, you probably don't want to challenge that on a bureau that's not showing that you're late at all. So really where that dispute is going to the bureau that is saying, hey, on my, whatever the credit report was, TransUnion has no late payments. Why Experian or Equifax are you showing 4? So you're just dealing with that bureau. You're not going to go to TransUnion and go, hey, TransUnion, you're not showing any late payments, but Experian and Equifax are. So just be mindful that that's the way that Credit Versio is thinking. It's not going to have you create a dispute for TransUnion if you have 0 late payments on it. We obviously thought about that. But keep in mind, you are doing a dispute with the data furnisher. It is possible that they can update TransUnion with those 4 late payments. Okay, it certainly is. So that's why thinking this through just a second or so to understand what might happen is a really important step. And Mike, that's a great job and it's a great call. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Thanks, David. That's a good response. Can't wait to join and get started. Yeah, we're looking forward to having you. Really easy to do this stuff. Bill, yes, it's confusing. Who knows what I was talking about at that time, but some of this stuff is confusing. Dale, will closing an account remove the history? No, it will not remove the history. So this was a thing that was misinformation that I've heard many times. This typically has to do with people closing credit cards. Now there could be a price to be paid if you do close a credit card. The first thing that can happen is you lose that capacity. You lose that credit line. So for example, let's just say I've got a credit card. It's got a really high annual fee. Let's say it's a couple $100. I don't use the card very much. Maybe it's like a starter card that I got when I was rebuilding my credit, because a lot of people have those. And it's got a $1,000 line of credit. So if I cancel that card, it's still going to stay on my credit report. I will still have the benefit of the age of that account. I just don't have the benefit of the capacity of that account. So that $1,000 that helped in my utilization is now not going to be factored anymore. So you have to consider that stuff pretty carefully, Dale. I'm not a fan of closing cards at all. I've got cards. I have two cards that I don't even use them anymore. One is the first card I got when I started rebuilding my credit again back in 2012. It was a starter card, a Chase card. I think it's got a $2,000 limit, which is, it's great, okay, but I don't use the card. I think I might have like Netflix on it or something like that just to keep it, active. But I'm not going to close that card because that's my oldest card. Because when I went through the credit repair process, when I kind of lost everything and had to start from scratch, all my credit was either deleted or just aged off. So even though 51 years old right now, when I had to start over about 10 years ago, my newest my credit file looks like a younger person's credit file because I went like credit invisible for about 3 or 4 years, which by the way a lot of people do when they go through bad times, especially during that Great Recession that we had. So, Dale, I would keep it open unless you got some compelling reason like ridiculous annual fees. But you got to count the cost and see if it's worth it to close it. But you won't lose the history. All right, Chad says thanks. Mike, oh dang, and Margaret. Oh boy, you know what, Margaret? This is way too big of a question for me to post. So either do it in chunks or email it to me at davidm@creditversio.com and I'll answer it for you. But I got to have something that's like bite-sized that I can tackle. Okay, so while we're waiting for the next question, let's go to the next part of what I was going to talk about, which is you want to put all of your disputes on one letter. I got this one a couple of times this week. Here's where this comes from. A lot of people who are not in the credit repair industry, the majority of the population, when they decide that they want to fix their credit, one of the best sources they go to, or they think is the best source, is like YouTube, or they'll Google something, and they're going to get a hold of a lot of bad information. This is probably 50% of my job as an instructor, as a certified FICO Pro, as an instructor, is teaching people how this stuff really works. And you'll hear this all over the place, like, oh, you can't dispute too many things at once. I've challenged people in the credit repair space who have said that. Show me in the Fair Credit Reporting Act where it says that. Now I haven't read the Fair Credit Reporting Act word for word, but I've been through the whole document many times. Nowhere in there does it say you can only dispute 2 or 3 accounts a month. That comes from the monthly fee credit repair companies, the ones that charge you 80, 100, 120 bucks a month. They want to dispute 2 or 3 accounts. Why do they do that? It's a continuity program. They make money charged every single month. As the longer you stay on, the more money they make. Not really, kind of pits the company against their customers' best interest. But that's where that comes from, where they've done such a good job. The monthly fee, and the biggest credit repair companies in the country, by the way, are monthly fee based. I won't name their names, but you probably know who they are. So there was a time, and they don't say this lately, not that I've heard anybody say, but there was a time where you would hear, hey, you can only do, to be safe, you only want to dispute 2 or 3 accounts a month. Well, that's in their best interest, but nowhere does it say that. And I've also, again, like we do here, I've had experts from inside the bureaus on this live. Some of these people are good friends of mine that I talk to every week, and they have told me, no, it doesn't matter. When you send a dispute letter, dispute everything you want. Okay, just put on there what you want. It's going to go out to all the data furnishers. Nobody's going to get your letter and go, oh, this person's disputing too much stuff. That never, ever happens. It's not going to flag the bureaus as something odd. The only time that they get flagged that something's off is if you start disputing 1 account per letter, because somewhere somebody told you to do that and it sounded like a good idea. Bureaus don't like stuff like that because they think you're trying to game the system. That's going to probably draw some attention that you don't want. But the whole point of doing a dispute letter is to do it naturally, as you would if you had some, real concerns on your credit report. For example, let's say you had identity theft and you got 15 accounts that aren't yours. You think the bureau is going to come back and say, no, we realize somebody stole your identity and charged up 15 accounts that aren't yours, but you can only dispute 2 or 3 a month. It's not the way the law is written. You can dispute as many accounts as you want. So put them all on 1 letter. I've seen people put, no joke, I have seen in Credit Versio and in my previous career at a big credit repair company, I've seen, we used to put 100+ disputes on a single letter. It was like 9 pages long. But what happens is it just gets fed into the credit bureaus. They have what are called OCR machines, or optical character recognition machines. And the person that's working there goes through it, attaches the file to wherever it's going. It's no big deal. Okay? All right. Any questions on that part? Margaret, I would love to put that up there. It's such a big question. Okay. Dale says, makes sense. Bill Jackson, my house note is not reporting on my Equifax. Is that hurting me, or should I contact them? So my first question, Bill, is unless it's a private loan or some kind of a hard money loan, is this a big bank? And if you filed bankruptcy, if the loan was reinstated, they're not going to report that anymore. You've reinstated the loan. It doesn't report to the bureaus anymore. Now, if you haven't filed bankruptcy, and if the data furnisher, if the home lender isn't reporting to the bureaus, you can call them and find out if they do report. Bank of America, yeah, they do report to all 3 bureaus. Bill, did you file bankruptcy at one point? If you did, and the house was reinstated, then that loan will no longer report. You'd actually have to refi. You'd have to have a new loan. That loan is considered to be dead as far as the credit bureaus are concerned. But if they're just not reporting and you've never filed bankruptcy, then yeah, I would call them. Yeah, you haven't filed BK? That's interesting, Bill. You might want to call them. I was about to go on a little bit of a tirade about how no data furnisher, Bank of America would be a data furnisher. Anybody who reports information to the bureaus is considered to be a data furnisher. They're not required to report. They can report to nobody. They can report to 1 bureau, 2, or 3. The only law that is out there pretty much says if they do decide to report, they just have to follow all of the laws that come under the category of consumer protections. Mostly it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and there's a handful of others. But they don't have to report. But having said that, B of A is a major lender, and they typically report to all 3 bureaus. I don't know what happened. You might want to give them a call and find out. Maybe there's some kind of a data problem somewhere. When I hear that, usually if they're not reporting, is it that they're not reporting to all bureaus, or is it that they're not reporting to just one bureau? Okay, Mike. Thanks, David. Lots of good information again this week. You're very welcome, Mike. Always glad to see you here. Margaret, email you. Okay, great. Medical, I can ask for proof of original bill for medical health care. Yeah, so that's kind of a long one, Margaret. I'd like to get into it, but it's a little too robust to put on here. Okay, Elizabeth, welcome. Good to see you. Just that one. Yeah. So Bill, if a data furnisher is not reporting to just one bureau, typically that's an ID problem. So it doesn't mean that they don't report to that bureau, most likely, because I would be willing to bet real money that B of A reports to all three bureaus all the time, because they're a big three bureau customer. They're always pulling data from the bureau. So if you're a big lender and you're pulling data from the three bureaus, you're reporting data to all three bureaus most of the time. So that's probably just some kind of an ID problem that they need to clear up. You might have to work with the bureau itself. You might have to work with, actually, I'd start at the bureau. So if it's, say, not reported on Equifax, I would maybe call them and see if they have all of your ID. That's what I would do. Okay, and as we're coming to the end of this, okay, 40, we got about 5 minutes left or so. So if you got any last minute questions, put them up there so I can answer them for you. And the last part I want to cover is on the dispute letter itself. Now, dispute letters, contrary to popular belief, simple dispute letters are the best. And when it comes to adding your ID to it, let me put this up on the screen. So if you're using Versio, you can tell that this is right out of the Versio dispute letter template. You see it says date of birth and social security, but it's blank. You have to write it in. And a lot of people ask, well, do I write that in by hand, or can I download the PDF in Word and redo it and type it in? You can write it in by hand. Again, you have to understand that when the bureaus receive letters, they're really not scrutinizing it all too much. All they want to do is get your dispute letter, get it scanned, figure out what you're asking, so they could send that dispute off to the data furnishers. Now, they're going to monitor everything. Ultimately, the bureaus are responsible for the data on your report, but they're really forwarding the disputes to the data furnishers. So nobody there is going to go, oh, well, look at Bill or Elizabeth or Mike or David hand wrote in their date of birth and social security number on this dispute letter. This looks like it could be a problem. Maybe we want to keep a close eye on this, or maybe we don't want to accept this dispute letter. So keep in mind that even if you were to send disputes off of a template, people think templates are bad. Like, oh, templates, you got to be able to fool the bureaus, or you got to write something original or write it by hand. No, you don't. If you looked at the quantity of disputes that go into the bureaus every single day, about 15,000 disputes are received by the bureaus every single day, give or take. A large chunk of them come from credit repair companies, just straight up. But right below that are individuals who send disputes off of templates. And where do they go to get these templates? The CFPB and the FTC. That's the two largest sources of templates. There's nothing wrong with that. It's your legal right. I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you want to know how to dispute something, nothing wrong with using a template, because it's going to walk you through the whole process. The bureaus are fine with this. So yeah, Versio is templamatic in some ways, or in the sense that it prints information in a format, but the dispute reasons and the accounts obviously are dynamic. It's based on your credit report, and it's based on what you're disputing, and it's based on what's going on with the account. But still, it comes out in a template form, perfectly fine. So you can write your date of birth and your social security on your dispute letter. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Okay. Deji, so if you had a foreclosure and had a deal with a bank for them to take the property, how long after the foreclosure can you apply for another mortgage? Actually, that's a great question, Deji. I don't know the answer to that because I'm not a mortgage broker. It changes all the time. Last I heard, it was 4 years, and then I think This is right after the Great Recession. So after the Great Recession, it used to be that if you had a foreclosure, it was 7 years, just like bankruptcy, like a Chapter 13. Excuse me, a Chapter 7. No, I'm sorry. Chapter 13 is 7 years. So, but that's how bad it was. And then, time passed. And then they're like, okay, well, now we'll lower the threshold to 4 years. And then the last I heard is 2 years. But that could be wrong. Okay, I'm not a mortgage broker. So if you want to, you could probably Google that question, and you're going to see some mortgage broker ads, no doubt, but you'll probably find an answer to that. But I'd be surprised if it was over 2 years. That's the last I heard. Okay, where are we on time? Yep, it's getting ready. We're getting ready to wrap up here. Okay, so this was one of the first times I was able to get through the subject that I wanted to cover, all 3 parts anyway. So I hope you got a lot of value out of today's live. A lot of people who watch this watch it on a replay. So if you're looking at this and it's not live, feel free to post your question on, if it's Facebook, I'll see it and respond to it. And looks like Bill's got one more. It says on the report, real estate mortgage, B of A, balance 0, status positive. Okay, so it's reporting. It's there. It might just be incomplete. So what you can do, Bill, you can dispute that. Just because something's not negative doesn't mean you can't dispute it. Happens all the time. In fact, my partner David, he had, what was it? He had a car lease that he had turned in, and it'd been turned in for 3 or 4 months. It wasn't negative; it was a positive account, but it showed that he still had a balance, that he still owed a few $100 or whatever it was. So he used Credit Versio. Again, this was just like a test, but he saw this on his credit report, and he disputed that. And that late payment was, I'm sorry, not late payment, that balance that was still due was removed, and it was set to 0. So, Bill, what you can do is like, hey, here's a screenshot of how my B of A looks like on these 2 bureaus. And on your bureau, it's not showing any information. Can you please fix this, or let me know what I need to do in order to get to give you the information, or for you to get the information to report all the accurate home loan information. Margaret, real easy. David M, as in Michalek, at creditversio.com. Send it over my way. And typically what I do is I don't usually write out long emails when I answer. I typically do like a screen recording, and I'll just do like a short video for you. Okay, thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate all the questions. Great questions today. Equifax said it was hurting your score. It depends. It's not going to hurt your score if it's positive. If it's a negative account, it might be hurting your score. But I would probably take that with a grain of salt. If the information is just not there, and I might even have to see it, Bill. So same thing that I gave to Margaret. If you want to email me a screenshot, I can take a look at it. But if it's a positive account, probably not hurting your score. You might not be getting all the points you could be getting if it was reporting correctly. But again, I'd have to take a look at it. Okay, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much.